If you're taking laxatives and supplements for constipation but still feel backed up or you can't go without them, there's a reason. In fact, there are 7 reasons. In this video, you'll learn the 7 overlooked causes of constipation that laxatives and supplements don't fix. Watch till the end where I show you what will fix it. Now, constipation can really weigh you down, pun intended, and make you feel all backed up, toxic, and sluggish. Now, normally, we should have bowel movements daily from 1 to 3 times per day. Now, constipation generally means passing fewer than 3 stools per week or having a difficult time passing stool. Now, doctors are actually telling patients that having bowel movements every other day is normal, and don't worry about it because so many people are not having daily bowel movements. Let me tell you that this is not normal. It is a very common problem, but common doesn't make it normal. Heart disease and cancer are common, but they're not normal. It's an epidemic. The reason for this is most people are treating the symptoms while ignoring the root cause. In fact, 7 overlooked causes, which I will share with you in this video. Now, symptoms of constipation includes fewer than 3 stools per week, hard, dry, or lumpy stools, straining or pain when passing stools, or a feeling that not all stools have passed, a feeling that the rectum is blocked. Now, constipation can definitely cause discomfort, but can also lead to toxicity, where toxic substances from the fecal matter gets reabsorbed and make you feel sick. Now, let's back up a second and understand the normal physiology of bowel movement first. Now, digestion starts from north to south. So how far north can digestion start? Well, it starts in the brain. When brain sees food, you smell food, you taste food, you think about food, your brain's priming the digestive pump. And it does so by sending signal to the vagus nerve, which is a nerve that wanders all throughout your GI tract. And this vagus nerve has branches that innervate the stomach, your gallbladder, pancreas, and intestine. It's going to help with promoting secretions of digestive enzymes and stomach acid, as well as bile. And it's going to support movement, which is peristalsis, which is that downward motility that keeps food moving from north to south. Now, peristalsis is that contraction and relaxation, this involuntary movement of the smooth muscles in your intestine to propel food forward. So we have a contraction phase where the contraction kind of squeezes the intestinal tube and that pushes the food forward, followed by a relaxation of the preceding segment. So this is a electrical activity of the smooth muscle that can actually be measured. And that electrical activity is called a migrating motor complex, which is the contraction and relaxation of the smooth muscle that push food forward, which is called peristalsis. Now, this is important because not only does it push food forward so it can proceed through the GI tract, so you can break down, digest, and absorb the nutrients, but also keeps undigested waste moving, also keeps the microbes that you may have ingested moving through your gut. So the microbes doesn't have enough time to set up shop and colonize in your colon and start to create problem. And this is how you prevent gut infections, partly through that movement of the food particles through the GI tract. Now, this migrating motor complex goes through about 1.5 to 2 hour cycles. So every 1.5 to 2 hours, it'll move through the GI tract. And again, that helps you to get rid of junk that you don't need. As that migrating motor complex is moving, you'll hear bowel sounds. So these are sounds of your tummy gurgling, and that's completely normal. And in fact, one of the ways that we clinically detect if a patient has decreased intestinal motility is by doing auscultation with a stethoscope on the abdominal area, and we're listening to these bowel sounds. You should have some kind of gurgling sound every few seconds. You can also hear this by just simply putting your ear on your loved one's tummy, and you'll hear the gurgling sound that's happening in there. And one of the indicators of low motility that can lead to constipation is that you don't hear very many sounds. It's like quiet in there because there's no migrating motor complex movement, there's no peristalsis. That's why you're not hearing it. Now, as the food keep moving through from north to south, after going through the secretions being digested and absorbed through the small intestine, then the food is going to reach the large intestine where it's going to be acted upon by the microbiota. Those are the beneficial bacteria in your GI tract, in the large intestine specifically. And these bacteria will act upon the food that's in the colon and actually produce various metabolites such as short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, acetate, and propionate. It's also going to produce various vitamins such as vitamin K and biotin are two specific vitamins that are produced by fermentation of the microbiota in the large intestine. So it serves a very important function. Now finally, the fecal matter then reaches the rectum. And by having stuff there, it's going to create stretch of the rectum. And the stretch receptor in the rectum detects stretch, which will cause the sacral parasympathetic nerve in the sacrum area, those parasympathetic nerve fibers, is going to cause you to have the urge to defecate. It's going to have a stimulatory signal on those muscles that's going to help you to push. Now, you do have some voluntary control, good thing, of the internal and external anal sphincters through voluntary motor nerves. So as you're getting stretch in the rectum with the fecal matter, it's going to give you the urge to want to push that out through these parasympathetic nerve fibers, which is involuntary. But then you have voluntary control to hold that so you don't just poop in the pants or you don't just go when you're not ready. So there's a push and there's an inhibition from the voluntary to hold it. But you can only hold it for so long because the stretch receptor, as it continues to stretch, it'll create that urge and finally it'll overcome your ability to hold that. Now, some people with aging, with chronic disease, may have a decreased ability to exert neural control, or they have weak muscles in the area that causes what's called bowel incontinence. So what causes this normal movement to slow down? Here are some obvious causes that you should correct first. Stool formation requires hydration. Otherwise, you get rock-hard stools that can be uncomfortable to pass. Some people call it rabbit pellets. Nope, these are definitely not Easter eggs. So dehydration is a common cause of constipation. Now, dietary fiber also helps to form the bulk of the stool and also helps to absorb moisture. Not to mention the fiber also feeds the beneficial bacteria in your colon, which then produces beneficial metabolites such as short-chain fatty acids that can help to regulate intestinal function. Now, the standard American diet is famously known for lacking in fiber, which is another common cause for constipation. Now, sedentary lifestyle, lack of activity, especially exercise, is one of the main factors that can lead to constipation. Basically, the colon responds to physical activity. Good muscle tone in general is important for regular bowel movements. The abdominal wall muscles and the diaphragm all play a crucial role in the process of defecation. If these muscles are weak, they're not going to be able to do the job very well. Now, aerobic exercise, which increases both heart and breathing rates, causes the natural movement of the intestines and make passing stools quicker and easier. Recent studies suggest that exercise can benefit and enhance the number of beneficial microbial species, enrich the microflora diversity, and improve the development of commensal bacteria. All these effects are beneficial for the host, improving its health status. Now, excessive alcohol intake can lead to constipation due to dehydration and slowing of the intestinal emptying. Now, alcohol is a poison for nerve cells. When you poison the nerve cells in the intestine responsible for motility, you replace peristalsis with paralysis of the muscles involved in bowel movement, causing constipation. Alcohol is also a great antiseptic, so it does a great job of wiping out your beneficial gut bacteria. It turns out that the beneficial gut bacteria are important in maintaining healthy intestinal motility via the production of various bacterial poop or bacterial metabolites that they produce, such as short-chain fatty acids like butyrate. Now, most studies on heavy alcohol consumption show that it alters the gut microbiome diversity and produces dramatic change in the relative abundance of certain opportunistic microbes, causing dysbiosis and inflammation in the gut, as well as leaky gut. Now, there are medications that can also cause constipation as one of their side effects. These include opioid pain relievers such as codeine and morphine, your tricyclic antidepressants such as amitriptyline, Medications for overactive bladder, blood pressure medications like amlodipine, verapamil, and propranolol, nausea meds like Zofran, your NSAIDs such as ibuprofen, and your antihistamine medications like Benadryl, as well as iron supplement can all be constipating. If you're constipated, check to see if you're taking any one of these medications that can be part of the reason for your constipation. Now, there are other causes of constipation that are often overlooked in conventional and even alternative medicine. In my experience of helping over 6,000 clients overcome their chronic conditions with functional medicine, these are the 7 overlooked causes of constipation that you and your doctor may not have considered. Now, the first overlooked cause of constipation is vagus nerve dysfunction. Now, that might seem obvious to you by now because now you learn the importance of vagus nerve in digestive function and peristalsis. But in a conventional medical model, and even in the natural alternative model, the vagus nerve is often overlooked because the focus is on treating symptoms by giving you some kind of laxatives. But remember, it all comes from the brain. Digestion starts north to south, and it starts in the brain, particularly with vagus nerve. Now, how do you know if you have vagus nerve problem? Well, vagus nerve has its function into so many things besides just digestion. Typically, then you're going to look for symptoms beyond just constipation itself. So if you have constipation and difficulty with swallowing and difficulty with digestion of protein, fats, and carbs, when all these things line up, then that may give you an indication that it is a vagus nerve problem, not something else causing constipation. The second overlooked cause of constipation is hypoxia, which is a state of low oxygen in your tissue. Now, all neurons are very sensitive to low oxygen state because oxygen is one of the most important fuel to nerves and neurons, which the vagus nerve is a type of nerve tissue. So when you have low oxygen, your vagus nerve will not be able to function properly, and that can consequently lead to constipation. Now, know that oxygen is delivered to your tissue via breathing the air, right, with oxygen, and then you have to have red blood cell to carry the oxygen, and then you have to have perfusion, which means you have to have circulation that gets the oxygen through your blood to your tissue. So any problem with breathing, such as sleep apnea or COPD, or even just shallow breathing, any problem with red blood cell, meaning if you have anemia of various different causes, or you have any problem with perfusion, be it you have low blood pressure or you have circulatory problems, this is all going to cause decreased oxygen delivery to your tissue, including the vagus nerve, and that may be an underlying cause of constipation. The third overlooked cause is blood glucose imbalance. One of your most important fuels for your neurons, besides oxygen, is glucose. Glucose is a preferred source of fuel for brain cells and for neurons. What that means is including the vagus nerve. And not only does your neuron need fuel, because glucose really is a source of energy from the food that you eat, but the migrating motor complex, right? For your smooth muscles to contract and push food through, it actually takes a lot of energy. In fact, the amount of energy it takes for you to just digest food is called the thermic effects of food. And it uses up to 10% of all the calories that you might use in a whole day. Now, if you have low blood sugar, this is like driving a car with a low fuel light on. I mean, that can be pretty anxiety provoking, right? Just to know like, oh, I'm gonna run out of gas anytime. Well, this is kind of what you feel like when you run on low blood sugar. Your brain gets anxious. That's why you get hangry, you get irritable, you get lack of focus, you have trouble with memory. This is all result from not enough fuel to the brain, and that can also impact the vagus nerve. The other flip side of low blood sugar is insulin resistance. That's when you have too much blood sugar because you're consuming too much carby, sugary food, driving up blood glucose level, causing your hormones that process sugar to no longer work, creating a double whammy of high glucose. Just remember, when you have high sugar in the blood leading to insulin resistance, that means the sugar cannot go into your cell. So you get a double whammy of not enough fuel inside the cell, but too much fuel outside the cell. And that fuel outside the cell is so damaging and inflammatory, it causes glycation. So literally with insulin resistance, you're causing the cells to starve to death while causing inflammation. And your vagus nerve does not stand a chance against this double whammy of lack of fuel and inflammation. It just really causes problems. Now, next cause of constipation could be neuropathy. Okay, now this is neuropathy I'm speaking of the vagus nerve and or the enteric nervous system, which is that rich network of nerves that innervate your gut. So much so that we're calling these nerves that innervate your gut the second brain. Now, this is in contrast to diabetic peripheral neuropathy. People tend to think of neuropathy in terms of diabetic peripheral neuropathy, where you get numbness and tingling in your hands and feet as a consequence of nerve damage from the high blood sugar that we were talking about. But diabetic neuropathy comes in these nice, neat, clean, defined symptoms. You get numbness, you get tingling, you can do sensory tests. Very easy to diagnose that. Where vagus nerve neuropathy, it's very difficult to diagnose because, as I said earlier, vagus nerve has its hands into multiple functions in the body, not just digestion. So the symptoms can be subtle, it can be confounding, it can overlap with other problems, and it can be very widespread. So it takes a doctor with a trained eye that looks at vagus nerve and takes the time to ask the right question to be able to identify a vagus nerve neuropathy problem that could be causing not just constipation, but a whole host of other problems. The next overlooked cause of constipation is IBS. IBC? This should be IBS. IBS is irritable bowel syndrome and of the constipation type. Okay? Now, just so you know that IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, is just a label. Okay? And having a label without knowing the cause is meaningless and useless. A lot of doctors like to give out the diagnosis of IBS. Okay, you go to the doctor, you say, hey, my bowel's irritated, I can't poop, I'm gassy. So you already told him what the symptom is. The IBS simply just saying you have irritable bowel, which you already told the doctor. Useless diagnosis. The important thing is what's causing it. Now, one of the causes of IBS is potentially small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is SIBO. In some studies, it shows up to 78% of people with IBS have SIBO as a co-occurrence. And with SIBO, you can produce two different types of gas. The methane gas that can produce by bacterial fermentation as a result of SIBO can cause constipation. So this could be one of the underlying causes of constipation. Poor sleep can also cause constipation. Now, the important thing is to understand what type. Is it a problem falling asleep? Is it a problem staying asleep? Is there some type of sleep apnea that's causing people to have poor sleep or waking up? Is there pain or discomfort? What's the underlying mechanism of causing poor sleep? Is it due to inflammation or blood sugar problem or stress? That's the important question we have to ask about sleep. The seventh overlooked cause of constipation is bile issues. Now, bile is produced in the liver, secreted and stored in the gallbladder, and is secreted in your GI tract to help you to break down fat. So it's very important in fat digestion and absorption. So problem with the bile can come in the form of decreased production by the liver. So that means you have some kind of liver issue where you cannot produce bile. It can be a sludge problem, which means the bile is too thick, so it's become sludgy. And stones can actually precipitate out of that, so you can have gallstones. Typically, this is due to a toxicity problem. And then third is decreased gallbladder contraction, because your gallbladder have to squeeze and squirt the bile into your GI tract. And if your bile doesn't contract, then the fluid or the bile sits there longer, and that can become sludgy because it's not flowing freely. And that's typically a vagus nerve problem. Now, all three of these issues, decreased bile function, can lead to increased fat in the intestinal tract because you're not breaking down fat properly, because that's the function of bile. When you have too much fat in the intestinal wall, then that can slow down motility and lead to constipation. As the old saying goes, you are what you eat. Then my mentor taught me that you are what you absorb. Now, I want to tell you that you are what you don't eliminate. So whatever junk you don't get rid of, that will be reflected in the health or the lack of health you experience. So what can you do to improve your bowel regularity so that you can eliminate properly and feel great? Well, let me suggest to you to identify the root cause of constipation rather than just asking what pill to take. Because different causes will require different solutions. Taking a laxative may get you to go to the bathroom, but the root cause of why you're constipated will persist, and then you become dependent on the laxative without actually improving function. Now, it's not wrong to take a supplement or a laxative to help you go, because if you gotta go, you gotta go. So things like high-dose magnesium and vitamin C can both induce bowel movement. Gradually increase the dose until you get to a desired bowel regularity and form. Now, some people can tolerate a lot, while others can get loose stool and diarrhea at the same dosage. Now, herbal compounds such as senna tea, cascara sagrada, fennel seed, rhubarb root can all have a laxative effect and are often used in supplements or smooth move teas to help improve constipation. But what is more important than supplement, though, is to address the root cause. So let's start with the obvious solutions. Number one, improve hydration, increase fiber intake, reduce alcohol, and get good sleep. Once you have these foundations in place, then identify whether these 7 overlooked causes are in play for you. You may need to work with a qualified functional medicine practitioner to identify some of these causes with a detailed history, consultation, and lab tests. Now, once you have identified a possible or multiple possible root causes, here are some tips on how to correct them. If you have vagus nerve problem, you want to consider stimulating the vagus nerve. You can do that through various vagus nerve stimulating exercise, such as humming, gargling, or gagging exercise. Deep breathing exercise and meditation can also be helpful. I made a video that goes into a deep dive into vagus nerve function and how to stimulate the vagus nerve. You can check it out on my channel. If you have hypoxia, you need to identify what type. If it's a breathing problem, you might want to do breathing exercise. You might want to do more exercise period, because when you do aerobic exercise, it tends to increase your aerobic capacity. Identify if there's sleep apnea and correct that. If you have anemia, you need to identify what type, whether there's iron deficiency or B12 deficiency or low stomach acid or autoimmune issue. It's all about identifying the cause of the problem. So there's not one size fits all approach for all anemia. For perfusion problem, you want to identify if we have low circulation, poor circulation, which you can improve with exercise. Certain herbs can improve circulation, like ginkgo biloba, vinpocetine. These are herbs that has some function in supporting normal circulation. If you have low blood pressure, much below 120/80, to the point you feel cold easily, you have low energy, you feel dizzy and lightheaded easily, you might want to increase that blood pressure up to normal, up to 120/80. And you may want to do that by incorporating sea salt. You can either sprinkle more sea salt into your food or simply add 1 teaspoon of sea salt to a liter of water. You can do that once or twice a day. And what you want to do is you want to track your blood pressure over time to see if that blood pressure gradually improves for you. And then see if that's a corresponding improvement in your constipation as you improve hypoxia. I'm going to tell you, improving hypoxia will improve more than constipation. It's going to improve your brain function, it's going to improve your energy, it's going to make you less inflamed. Blood sugar problem. Blood sugar problem comes in 3 primary flavors. Number 1 is hypoglycemia. For the low blood sugar folks, you want to consider eating small frequent meal to prevent that blood sugar from tanking. For the insulin resistant folk who have high blood sugar, you might want to consider intermittent fasting, definitely low carb diet. For people with a mixed pattern where you have both low and high blood sugar, that means your blood sugar is unstable. So what you want to do is you want to make sure you're eating consistently, and you want to eat more fiber-rich food with good amount of protein and reduce refined carbs so you're not getting the sugar spike and a subsequent crash. For those of you with neuropathy, this requires working with a qualified healthcare practitioner that knows how to look at vagus nerve function and able to spend the time needed with you to take a detailed history and to draw out the symptoms that can indicate a vagus nerve problem. And any type of neuropathy can be caused by various insults to the nerve. That could be a fuel problem, such as hypoxia or blood glucose issue causing neuropathy, or it could be due to some type of autoimmune issue causing neuropathy, or it can be due to some kind of environmental toxin exposure, because a toxin can definitely poison the nerves and cause neuropathy as well. In those with IBS that may be caused by SIBO, we want to identify whether SIBO is actually something that you have. And if so, we can address the SIBO by incorporating a low FODMAP diet, which is cutting out specific type of fiber and roughages that feed the bacteria, at the same time using either antibiotics or natural antimicrobials to decrease the pathogen load. For those of you with sleep problem, we need to identify, again, the type and the cause. Because if you have sleep problem because you have hypoglycemia, then we need to address it as a hypoglycemia problem that's causing the sleep issue. Versus someone have sleep issues because they're inflamed, then we need to address the inflammation to help them with sleep. So again, kind of like constipation, you can take a sleeping pill, but it's not addressing the cause of the sleep problem. You can take a laxative to help you to go, but it's not addressing the underlying root cause of the constipation. Lastly, if you have bile issues, then we may need to support liver, gallbladder, maybe detox, herbs such as dandelion root, milk thistle, taurine, inositol. These are substances that help you to either thin the bile or promote bile flow. These are called cholagogues, and cholagogues has a function of improving bile flow and bile contraction. Now, if you're someone that has gallbladder removed, these cholagogues are still very useful for you because even without a gallbladder, your liver is still producing bile and you still want it to be flowing properly. So now that you know the 7 overlooked causes of constipation, you can begin to look for them and get on the right track of solving them. Let me know in the comments which one of these overlooked causes you may be struggling with. Now, if you got value and help from this video, please give me some love by smashing that like button. Please go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, so this way you can get notified when I release new videos that will help you solve your health puzzles. God bless. See you in the next video.